Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Dan and Joe Sports Show. As always, I'm Dan.
And I'm Joe.
And Joe, wearing my Saints jersey tonight. We of course had the draft last week. Um, I would say in terms of drafts we've had lately, probably the least disappointed I've been in a while, but there's still a lot of level of disappointment. I go into every single draft season expecting the worst. I can't remember the last time I was happy about a draft that the Saints had. I feel like we're perennially among the worst draft teams that there is. And this one fit within the bill. But the best positive I can say is that I actually was happy with their first round draft pick in Chris Olave. They desperately needed a wide receiver, and he was definitely one of the ones that I had among my top three.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a great pick. You really think he's going to be a star, a guy that's going to be impactful from day one. Hopefully you can get Michael Thomas back and just instantly makes that offense more electrifying. You hear a lot of negativity about the Saints draft class. I think I told you via text, my biggest issue with the class is the lack of depth. I don't like this concept that they've been in, this addiction, if you will, of just trading up so often. Not just Olave, but just like how they'll trade up and lose or mortgage later round picks. Like, I don't think they have a third or fourth round pick in this year's draft. And this has consistently, Dan, been a problem really since probably 2018 when they drafted Marcus Davenport, where they've had so many years where they're not drafting players they're not getting the players they're getting are not coming from the 7 rounds of the draft. Like, let's say they get 3 or 4 players that are drafted, and then everybody else they're loading up on is undrafted free agents, which can be hit or miss and very unpredictable. And I think at some point that hurts your quality depth, just having those misses year in and year out. And so to me, that's my biggest critique of the class. I don't, though, think it's as bad as a lot of experts were saying. I think that anytime you can get Olave, you can get Penning, who I do think is going to be a starter probably from week 1 at left tackle. And then Alontae Turner, to me, is a guy that's going to take development, but I do think he's going to be a good cornerback in this league and help them on special teams. And so if you can get 3 guys that can eventually be starters from you in a draft, I don't think there's any way you can call this a D or an F draft. But for me, it just goes back to the lack of quality depth.
Well, Joe, the thing that I look at is we get to the second round. I mean, Penning, I understand that pick. I'm someone that, I look at the history of the Saints. They don't have a great track record for evaluating D2 talent. I mean, let's just face it. I look at what we traded to get Marcus Davenport. That hasn't panned out. The last time that I can think of the Saints having a player that was either a lower level D1 or a D2 player that I feel like worked out was Lance Moore, the wide receiver from Toledo, that felt like he was, a longtime Saints player that really outseeded his value. Marcus Colston would be another one that they got late, but I'm talking about someone that they traded up in the early rounds to get, that was someone not from a traditional school. They do a poor job of evaluating that talent. They always have. And so that's why this pick worries me for that reason.
Well, here's what I would say about that. And hopefully this can ease the concerns of, I think, what a lot of people like you have brought up within the Saints organization. I'm encouraged because in the offensive line position, they have drafted well. Obviously Ryan Ramczyk from Wisconsin, first round pick. They drafted Cesar Ruiz out of Michigan. But even schools that are not in Division I, Arkansas Pine Bluff is where they drafted Teron Armstead.
Okay.
They got him in the 3rd round, and of course they lost him this year to free agency. But he was a Pro Bowl caliber left tackle for the team for 7 or 8 years. And so that's the reason I'm encouraged with Penning in his development. And then also I think they kind of had to draft him out of necessity. They had to have a left tackle after losing Armstead, and I think he was the best available at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was listed as the best player on the board at that point. And so I get that. But, there were some people later on, like I thought Falele from Michigan, from Minnesota might be someone that maybe they could have somebody ended up drafting in the 4th round. Maybe you could have waited and got someone like that that's got all that size. But that he's not the one that I'm really upset about. I'm more upset about the Turner pick in the 2nd round, when suddenly you open it up and there's so many, quarterbacks available when I think that, we're putting a lot of stock in Jameis Winston, but he's coming back from the surgery. You don't know that he's going to be at the same level he was before. Was the level that he was at enough for the Saints to have a great season? They were doing well, but their defense was playing good. Wasn't that a great opportunity to take someone who could have pushed him to be better and maybe could have been the guy and done more like what the Titans did? I thought the Titans had a beautiful draft, and I loved them taking Malik Willis right there to press Ryan Tannehill. I think that was a great chance for the Saints to either draft Matt Corral or Malik Willis to push Jameis Winston in case he doesn't come back the way he needs to.
Yeah, I was really surprised they didn't go quarterback at that junction. Really thought they were going to do that. But, even if they didn't go him, or go quarterback, I thought they would consider going with Nakobe Dean since he surprisingly fell to the second round. I thought he would have been a good linebacker.
He didn't get picked
right. But that's true. He fell to the third round. He was still available in the second round. They could have gotten him. So that surprised me. But I will say this. I think that they wanted to go defense. I got that idea. And I think it's largely because the Saints kind of maybe stubbornly feel like this is a team that can be a competitive team this year. And I think that even though Nakobe Dean might have been an upgrade at linebacker, they have a lot of depth at that position. They have Zach Bond, who is a quality starter. He actually doesn't even start for the team. He comes off the bench. And so that is a position they have more players. And then they don't have as many players in secondary after losing Marcus Williams and, of course, Malcolm Jenkins to retirement. So I think that is the only explanation I can think of for going after Alontae Turner. I do think Turner's going to be good. I really do. I just think it may be a year or two before we see him come to fruition.
Well, Joe, I understand that they do have a decent amount of talent at linebacker, but at some point you do got to look at the best player on the board. And I couldn't believe that Nakobe Dean was available in the second round. I couldn't believe you saw 5 Georgia players get drafted ahead of him. And when I saw him available, I was like, okay, if the Saints don't go quarterback here to press Jameis Winston, let's go get Nakobe Dean, because that guy to me is a guy who, even if he is recovering from an injury, he's a second-year starter, if not a first-year starter. And he's just such a brilliant player. And I think he would pair so well with Demario Davis too.
No, it would have made a lot of sense. And I think you were talking about, his intelligence. He's a guy, I think, that majored, in engineering or something like that.
I think he had a chemical engineering degree in 3 years at Georgia while playing football, and at playing football at the highest level, which to me is an unbelievable feat.
Yeah. So, I mean, it would have made a lot of sense for character and just his talent. But like I said, I really think stubbornly they think they're going to be able to be competitive. And I think they felt like special teams is somewhere they can plug Turner in from day one, and he can actually make an impact there, even if he's not ready to start in the secondary.
Well, and that's well and good, Joe, but why would, now they're going out and they're getting Tyrann Mathieu. So my question is, if you're getting Tyrann Mathieu, which I love, I think that's going to be great. I mean, he's exceeded all of my expectations in the NFL. Why are we getting a safety in the draft when we're going to get, Tyrann Mathieu?
Because Turner can play special teams. I think that would be the rationale.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'll say this in terms of getting safety depth. I did like something that they did in free agency. I thought them getting Smoke Monday from Auburn as a free agent is a steal, because I think he's somebody that probably should have been drafted in the 5th or the 6th round. And I think maybe just got knocked for how many times he got, dinged with targeting penalties. I feel like that has to be like something that pressed him back, because from a standpoint of physicality, ball hawking, creating turnovers, I mean, he's one of the better safeties that was out there.
Yeah, that was a great pickup. A good free agent move, and I think they had to have him, and really helps out. And he's a guy that's had a lot of playoff experience recently too.
Yeah. Well, Joe, I mean, not to dwell on the badness of the Saints draft. Like I said, it wasn't the worst one that I've seen in the last few years. I was very happy with Olave. I was happy with some of the free agent pickups they had later. But I want to talk about teams that I liked their overall product they did in drafting period. I like the Titans a lot. You look at them, they make this big trade where they trade AJ Brown out, but they end up getting they ended up getting the Arkansas wide receiver who's so good in the first round. Someone that I liked, and you looked at Treylon Burks, like every single game, that dude was getting 100 yards, and he was showing that he was the best player on the field. And it didn't matter which defense he went against. He went against great defense. He still would go out and show that he's a guy that was very worthy of a first round draft pick. And you look at, AJ Brown and him, kind of a similar build. They kind of do similar things in the wide receiver position. So if Treylon Burks ends up being somebody that's in the same like hemisphere as AJ Brown, then maybe you did the right thing by not having to pay all this money for him and getting Treylon Burks on the cheap. And you mix that with what I said in the second round, they went out and got Malik Willis to press Ryan Tannehill, who 2 years ago had a great season and suddenly is coming back to be maybe a top 10 level quarterback. Well, last year he didn't do as good. And in the playoff game, frankly, he's the reason they lost. So I kind of like getting Malik Willis right there. And it just seemed like, they were someone that was being very consistent with all their picks. And I think they really improved their team.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And they're also kind of falling in that mindset of trading your high-profile wide receiver and not giving them that lucrative contract. And the more I've thought about it, Dan, we've heard a lot of discussion about it in the last few months with, of course, Davante Adams and, of course, with Tyreek Hill being traded as well. And the more I think about it, I really am starting to side with these teams and understanding why they're making these trades. Because, you look at what the Chiefs and the Packers did in addition to the Titans. They moved these, top-level wide receivers. They get all this draft capital back, and they don't have to pay them these 5 or 6 year contracts. And to me, it makes a lot of sense when you think about it. And so the other teams I really liked their draft are the Chiefs and Packers, especially the Chiefs. I think at the end of the day, they're going to end up winning that trade with the Dolphins. I was not happy with what the Dolphins did in the draft, largely because they didn't have a first or a second round pick in the draft. So that kind of hurts their depth collectively. But I really think the Chiefs hit a home run getting 2 great defensive players in the first round. We talk about them playing that, shootout game against Buffalo and then losing to the Bengals in the AFC Championship game, but their defense couldn't stop Burrow or Josh Allen either. So I think it was good to address that side of the ball. And I quite frankly think that Sky Moore is going to be potentially a star in the making and eventually replace Tyreek Hill fine in Kansas City. With the Packers, though, I like what they did for the long haul, but I do think they're going to miss Davante Adams more than the Chiefs will miss Tyreek Hill. I think if you're in that win now mindset, I am a little bit concerned about the Packers contending for a Super Bowl this year with what they did with the roster. But for the long haul, I think they got some good building blocks here.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny that yet again you see the Packers not go out and get a wide receiver in the first round. But you look at who they got in the second round, and while it's not one of the names that we had out there, you look at what the receiver from North Dakota State did. I mean, the guy's a physical freak. I mean, he's huge. He was by far like the men amongst boys out there. And it looks like he's got some pretty good top end speed. And we've seen that North Dakota State players have done typically pretty well in the NFL as of late. And so I think that might end up being a good pick. Of course, they miss out on all the bevy of great wide receivers that were available in the first round, but maybe they did get a diamond in the rough there. But it did seem like, it was a pretty good draft for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to be fine with this draft. It's just, I don't think the North Dakota wide receiver, Watson, I don't think he's going to be ready to, be a replacement for Adams in year 1 or year 2. Like if you told me 3 years from now, he's a Pro Bowl first team guy, I wouldn't be that surprised. But they don't really have other receivers around him either that are as talented at this stage of their career. Whereas like if I go back to the Chiefs, I think that Moore is going to be good at receiver, but he doesn't really have to be as impactful immediately because you still have Travis Kelce. You brought in Juju Smith-Schuster. You added Vantez Scalding. And so the Chiefs are in a good place.
Yeah. Joe, another team that I really liked, kind of hitting from a holistic standpoint, I thought the Lions had a very good draft. You're able to get Aiden Hutchinson at number 2, who is the hometown kid. He plays at Michigan. His dad played at Michigan. Getting him to come to the Lions, that's good for not only bringing people into the seats, but he's also a fantastic player and someone that's going to make an instant impact. Then you look at, they may have ultimately gotten the best wide receiver in this draft. We don't know that he's going to be 100% this year, but the Lions are a long way from being where they're going to be a contender anyway. If you have to wait a year or two for Jameson Williams to get back to his form, it's worth it. From a top end speed, I mean, the guy is ultimate burner on deep balls. He's also just a good pass catcher out of the backfield and is decent at fighting to get balls in traffic. And he may ultimately be the best wide receiver in this draft. And then not only that, they go and they get the Kentucky defensive end that was so good right at there afterwards in the second round, and someone who maybe could have been a first round talent in Kennard. And I just really liked what the Lions did. I thought they really improved their team.
Yeah, they did. They did. They're going to sell a lot of tickets, getting Hutchinson, regardless of what people think about him, and whether he's going to be a sure thing. You're definitely going to suddenly get a lot of jersey sales, a lot of people energized by his drafting as well. The other two teams I was really encouraged for, obviously the New York teams. I really like the Giants draft. I know the Jets got even more hype, but I like what the Giants did. I mean, what a luxury to get Evan Neal, who I think we both think is a sure thing.
And number 7, too.
At number 7, yeah, what a steal. And then you have the luxury, since you had 2 first-round picks, of being able to kind of take a flyer on Thibodeau, and maybe he's a star, and you don't have as much pressure drafting him since you already got Neal.
I mean, it's possible, Joe, that they got the most talented defensive end and the most talented left tackle in the draft. And regardless of what you do outside of that, if you do that in the draft, you've won. I mean, those are 2 of the 3 most important positions in all of football right there. You got quarterback, you got left tackle, and you got defensive end. And if you get 2 guys that ultimately may be the best talents at those positions in a draft, then that's just excellent. And getting them, 5 and then 7. And the fact that they were able to get Evan Neal at 7 is maybe the biggest steal of this draft, outside of Nakobe Dean getting drafted in the 3rd round.
Yeah, I think so. And like I said, while the Jets, and justifiably so, got a lot of hype with their draft class, you can make an argument in the case that the Giants got the 2 players that are more foundational pieces, getting a lineman and a pass rusher.
Absolutely. Joe, I also like what the Ravens did. The Ravens, to me, I feel like they just impress every single draft day, and they get guys who just make sense for their system. And I love them getting Jordan Davis in the 1st round. I mean, don't you just see Jordan Davis as a Raven? I mean, he just fits within that mold so well. And then I kind of felt like, they also addressed some of the issues they had at playmaker, and they were able to get a wide receiver later on. And I thought that the Ravens had a nice draft.
Yeah, everything I read about the draft as far as grades had them like it either an A or an A plus based on what they did. On the downside, as far as low grades I would give teams, the 2 teams that stood out to me is I just was not really happy with their drafts. I think would actually be Jacksonville and Houston. Jacksonville largely because we're talking about before the show, Trayvon Walker was not even the best player in his own team. I think we both had 3 or 4 players, or at least 2 or 3, that we would have taken off that Georgia defense before Trayvon Walker. I heard Mel Kiper Jr. say that he ranked Trayvon Walker maybe as his 8th or 9th best player available, yet Jacksonville suddenly somehow sees him as the best player available. So I don't understand the evaluation process there. And then with the Houston Texans, I don't like kind of overreaching for Stingley at number 3. I don't understand. I don't understand that at all. And I thought their other 1st round pick was kind of a player that was lower on a lot of draft boards at center. And so don't really understand what they were doing either.
Yeah, Joe. I mean, we talked about this before. Stingley is an amazing talent. I mean, when he's playing at his best, he is a next level cornerback. But you worry about the commitment to his team. You worry about him being a little bit selfish. And in my mind, when you have these questions about a player, why do you want to take him with the number 3 overall pick, especially when you have so many other problems? I mean, you don't have Deshaun Watson anymore. You have a guy in Davis Mills who's probably not someone you ever thought would start a game for you. I mean, in all reality, and he's your starting quarterback right now. You're bereft of wide receiver talent. I mean, of course, you had that ridiculous trade where you got rid of DeAndre Hopkins and you didn't get much in return for it. You're low on playmakers. You know, one of the problems that Watson had when he was there is he was getting sacked a lot. It's not a great offensive line, and yet you give up the opportunities to help Davis Mills out and getting someone like an Evan Neal, and I think even the guy from NC State was available at that point. And you don't go and you get the playmaker, and I didn't understand it at all.
Yeah, I mean, like I generally am against too, like going cornerback in the top 5. Like I'll make an exception for the Jets because I think Gardner can be that good, and also the Jets hit such a home run with their other picks. Like it wasn't just Gardner.
And they got Garrett Wilson, so I think you could have drafted Garrett Wilson at 4, and I don't think that would have been a reach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And so, like if you're the Texans, though, like, if you're drafted at 3, you've got a lot more problems than just quarterback. And so I always lean towards going like either offensive line, pass rusher, can't miss quarterback or receiver that high in the draft.
Yeah, absolutely. And someone else I felt like who had not just a good draft, but kind of a good like season in terms of getting players. The Eagles, thought the Eagles did a good job to improve their team. And you look at what they did in the offseason, going and getting Amari Cooper, bringing him into the fold, and they're kind of taking the philosophy that they're not going to have to spend all this money on Jalen Hurts. Just build everything around them. You help them out. They got some good O linemen for them. And suddenly the keys are to the castle to Jalen Hurts with what is just an amazing amount of talent around him. And if he can't do it, then they can go up and get a quarterback next year, and that's fine. And they're just in a good position right now. And I feel like they've done a very good job of building a team for the future with the Eagles.
They really have. And I think they actually may go into the season as being the favorites in the NFC East division. The Cowboys, to me, just won't be as explosive on offense. And so I really think the Eagles are in a good place.
Absolutely. Was there anyone else that you really thought shone out, Joe, in terms of like good drafts?
No, the big 4 for me were Kansas City, Green Bay, and the 2 New York teams that I was really impressed with.
Absolutely. And for me, Joe, like I said, I was a big fan of what the Giants did. Big fan of the Titans. I thought the Titans made some like good, kind of brave picks, but ones that I thought were worthwhile. And then, your usual cast of characters, the Ravens doing a good job. And then I definitely like the Lions too. I thought the Lions were one of the ones who probably improved their team the most.
Yeah, every time going back to the Ravens, every time I feel like they draft somebody, everybody kind of turns around. They're like, wait, the Ravens got him. Why didn't I think of that? Like, they're just, to me, like they draft on just a doctoral level.
They do. That's right. And meanwhile, the Saints are paying out student loans like they're at a doctoral level in terms of how much they mortgaged in order to get any kind of pick.
Right. It's the mortgaging. Like I can't emphasize that enough. Like all the draft picks they lose to go up for these players.
I mean, if the Saints were, taking student loans out with what they gave up for draft picks, they'd be going to like Harvard Medical School with the amount of student loans they're taking out. With every single year, they trade away so much in order to get arguably not that much back.
Yeah, and they always justify it. You used to hear Sean Payton say, if there's a player that we want, we move up for him, we target him. And I get that. But think about through the years, the starters that they've undoubtedly missed on because they did that. That 3rd round pick that could have been a hidden gem that they never got to draft.
That's right. And this year it was a 3rd round or a 4th round pick they didn't have available.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Lasting thoughts. At least we got Olave, and I don't have to feel bad about, with so many amazing 1st round, draft weapon receivers, they didn't get one of them. But in my mind, I still kind of would have liked maybe them going wide receiver, and then going left tackle in the 2nd round, because in my mind, I think they need to trade Michael Thomas. And so, that would have been a chance that was available to him.
They probably should have, but they could go back 2 or 3 years, like that was prior, of course, to this new age mindset of flipping, or trading your star wide receiver. They, of course, did the contrary and gave him the big contract.
Right. I mean, and which maybe has been on these people's minds. Maybe this was on the Packers' mind when it came to Devontae Adams. Maybe that was on the Chiefs' mind when it came to Tyreek Hill, as they looked at it and they said, well, look at what happened when the Saints gave away the entire farm to get Michael Thomas. It's destroyed them. And so let's get away from that. I think Michael Thomas might be the poster child as to why you don't give the wide receiver the big second contract.
Yeah, because I mean, who doesn't want, like a young, energetic receiver too that you can plug in? They're like happy to be there. Whereas, you have this veteran that's, maybe been to Pro Bowls and they're kind of at that point kind of spoiled, So I just love kind of having that spark plug that you can get as the first round talent. But what's fascinating, Dan, is I heard somebody say the Buffalo Bills are going to be the case study to see if you can have that high paid quarterback and the high paid receiver coexisting and win a Super Bowl, because you have Josh Allen. And of course, they gave the big contract to Stephon Diggs. They did not trade Diggs.
Yeah, we'll be interested to see that. I mean, and certainly they're the favorite to win it all this year. So we'll see if things finally work out for the Bills Mafia. And we hope that you work out to watching us next week. You can catch all of our episodes on Spotify. You can also subscribe to our YouTube page and see all the newest episodes we've uploaded on there. And then, of course, you can follow us on Twitter at DJ Sports Show. And as always, I'm Dan.
And I'm Joe.